Hi everyone, thanks for joining. We're gonna wait another minute while people are still logging on and then we'll get started. All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining us for today's QuickBooks Desktop webinar. My name is Kristen Fredericks. I work in the marketing department at JMT. I'm just gonna go over a couple housekeeping notes before we get started. So if you have any questions, please put your questions in the questions box on the control panel of your Zoom. And we'll wait to the end to answer all those. And then you will receive the recording and slides after the presentation. I will be emailing those to you. If you want a CPE credit, you can earn one CPE credit. So if you want to do that, you have to respond to 3 out of the 4 polling questions that will come up throughout the presentation, complete the survey that will pop up at the end of the webinar, and stay on for the entire duration of the webinar. And if you have any issues, please put them in the Q&A box, or you can email me at kfredericks@jmtconsulting.com. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Bulin, to get started.
Great, thank you, Kristen. So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our presentation. So today's presentation is on QuickBook Desktop and QuickBook Online. I'm sure that you probably have seen a number of webinars similar to this, similar to this topic. We're still working with organizations that are very much still on QuickBooks Desktop and, transitioning. We're working with them to transition to QuickBooks, whether they're moving to QuickBooks Online or moving to something else. And so we felt like this is still a very appropriate topic to present. So really quick, I am going to just a quick intro. We're going to start with a quick introduction. So I'm Bulin Tran. I'm Senior VP of Financial Solutions here at JMT Consulting. I've spent 25 plus years serving and supporting nonprofit with their back office accounting operations, specifically working with organizations on their systems, whether it be ERP, accounting systems, or it's budget management solutions or AP automation. And joining me today is Lakenya Taylor. Lakenya, do you mind you presenting yourself?
Sure. I am the manager of client support here at JMT Consulting. I have been here almost, I think, 3 years or more. And so I am here to assist with Bulin because I have actually taught QuickBooks online for off and on probably about 6 years. So just wanted to be here and share some good insight with you as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So we have we're doing a couple of things. We have a couple of slides that we're going to go through, and hopefully we'll have time to also showcase an alternative to QuickBook Online, which is Sage Intacct. So so let's talk a little bit about who we are. So JMT Consulting was founded in 1991 to help nonprofit achieve their mission. We work exclusively with nonprofit organizations, and we're here, as you can see in the map, we're headquartered in Nashville, Tennessee. We serve over 2,000 nonprofits, which is a lot, across the US and a few in Canada, supporting the nonprofits' back office accounting operations with financial systems as well as accounting services. And speaking of our services, we listed out a few of our services that we provide. The first item there is implement and support cloud-based ERP solutions. And in there, we are partner with Sage Intacct. We're a premier partner with Sage Intacct. And the solution is Sage Intacct. And then we also provide support on MIP as well. Then the next item here is the implement and support budget management solutions. There are a few that we implement and support, which includes the Sage Intacct, budgeting and planning solutions, as well as Martis. That is a very popular budget management solution that integrates directly with Sage. And as well as another solution called Venna. Now, Venna is an FP&A solution. It's very robust, and it integrates with really any ERP, whether it be QuickBooks Online, whether it be Sage Intacct, it might be pretty much any platform Venna can integrate. Other services that we offer includes the outsourced accounting services. For outsourced accounting, the platform that we use to manage our clients' outsourcing accounting outsourcing work is Sage Intacct. We also perform accounting or finance operation assessment review, where we're looking at how to streamline or improve their accounting operations as well as the systems associated with that. We also assist with system integration. So many times when we implement a solution like Sage Intacct, that may need to integrate with other solutions, and we assist in that integration. And we also help clients with their grant management needs. So we do have our own conference, which we call Innovate. Innovate is JMT's, it's a 2-day annual conference for nonprofit finance professionals, where we bring together the people, ideas, the experience and knowledge. And it's a great conference. We have multiple tracks that we present at this conference, and it is May 5th through the 7th. And it's going to be held at Nashville. So Nashville is a very, very fun city. So if you're interested in checking out Nashville, feel free to sign up for our in-person conference. All right, so this is a CPE credited presentation. So I wanted to just quickly run through the learning objectives. So we're going to compare the critical differences between QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online. We will also identify the key steps for evaluating and selecting the right accounting solutions. And finally, hopefully we'll have time. The objective is to look at a Sage Intacct as a leading alternative and upgrade options for business seeking advanced functionality. Our agenda for today is, of course, we'll talk a little bit about where QuickBooks Desktop is today, so an update on that. What are the differences between the two, meaning the QuickBooks D as well as the QuickBooks O? We'll talk a little bit about the accounting system selection process, what you should be thinking about, what does that process look like, and why do organizations would consider upgrading to a platform like Sage Intacct? So before we start, this is a CPE accredited presentation. This is our first polling question. So if you can take really a quick second to complete the polling question. And what we're going to do is we're going to show the results of the polling questions. see what that results is, just so to see what people are on today. I anticipate they're either on QuickBooks Desktop or QuickBooks Online. Heads up and share. I'm not seeing it though.
I'm sharing it now. Can you see it?
All right. Yep, I see it. Thank you. So, yeah, so majority are on QuickBooks Desktop, so very appropriate for this this presentation. All right. So, to the next slide here. So I'm going to pass this to LaKenya, who's going to talk in the next couple of slides, really more on QBD and QBO.
Right. So I don't know if you've already heard or not, but QuickBooks Desktop 2020 is going to discontinue after May 31st. And this will take place for all versions of 2022. So this basically means that there will be no more live technical support or other Intuit services provided. I actually had this happen to me one time when I was working with a nonprofit. They didn't want to upgrade, and so although the different pop-ups come up, whenever because you're not upgrading and you're not receiving any services. So hopefully you do not run into this issue. And we just want to make sure you're informed. And of course, the initiative is to move everyone to QuickBooks Online. Next slide, Bulin.
Yeah, and that's what Intuit
Sure.
would like you to do, right? Because they want you to stay within the QuickBook family.
Right. And so in that process, if you do decide to move over to QuickBooks Online, the migration process would need to take place. And so you would definitely want to evaluate your QuickBooks Desktop information, because some information actually do not move over to QuickBooks Online. For instance, it was what was it that I just looked at? You know what? The QuickBooks Online doesn't support units of measure for inventory items. That was one thing that I did see, that it does not move over to QuickBooks Online. You should also consider which QuickBooks Online plan you would like to choose. There are actually 4 plans, and so you definitely want to look into that. You want to make sure that you prepare your desktop files to be moved over in the migration over to QuickBooks Online. You can actually do that within QuickBooks Desktop to migrate over, or you could also do it on QuickBooks Online. And then you want to review the data to make sure everything is correct and has moved over properly. You can always contact their support, and they'll be willing to assist you in that process. And you definitely want to make sure that you're trained, because we know that QuickBooks Desktop is not the same as QuickBooks Online.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a big one. And the next slide. So the QuickBooks Online features is that one, they offer automatic features like bank feed. That's a huge one in QuickBooks Online. Also, the third-party apps are major. There are so many. I can't think of the total number, but there are hundreds of third-party and apps that are on the QuickBooks Online software. Also, QuickBooks Online has the mobile app where you can take pictures. If you're taking pictures of your receipts, and then they will go right into your system. And then even if you went on to your computer and logged in, you would be able to see those receipts. Also on your phone, you can access pretty much everything that you would see on your computer as well. And then of course, the backup is great because this is a cloud-based software, so that helps out as well. And then payroll is fully integrated with online versions, and it updates at real time.
Right.
And on the next slide, we have the
So
polling
we
question.
got to our polling question number 2. So we need 4 polling questions. So this this is just again pulling our audience. Hopefully everyone, well, that we only work with nonprofits, so it'd be interested to see if most of the folks in this audience are nonprofits. And so, oh, I've got the results already. That was fast. All right. So it looks like majority are nonprofits. But obviously obviously QuickBooks Desktop is used by all different type of organizations, nonprofit or for-profit. So if you're still on the desktop, so, hopefully this webinar would be helpful for you. I'm going to move on to the next slide. All right.
Okay, so what I did is I'm involved in several different groups that are related to accountants and bookkeepers. I've been in accounting for over 20 years, so I have always stayed in contact and make sure I'm a part of different groups. And so what I did was I asked a question, pretty much did a survey, and I said, please let me know if you have worked with QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online. And then which one do you prefer? And also, what do you like about, the one that you prefer? And so when I did that, I was shocked at the a major, like everyone responded. So I had a whole lot of responses from putting that survey out there. And this was the feedback that was giving either, the pros and the cons for both. So under the QuickBooks Desktop, comfort level was like the number one thing for QuickBooks Desktop. And you probably feel the same way, those of you, because I saw that we had majority that are still working with QuickBooks Desktop. And everyone in the group has worked with QuickBooks at least 10 to 30 plus years. And so if you've worked, with it for a long period of time, of course, you have a better comfort level with it. So also, they mentioned that it was more robust reporting. If you have construction and manufacturing, like that is huge. That's not in the QBO. So that's really good. And then also better for multiple entities. And what we know about QBO is that you have to purchase separate subscriptions. And so by having multiple licenses and so forth in the desktop, like that's very helpful. And then they mentioned better reconciliation. One thing that was mentioned about that was that if you click on any of the line items, it will select it because in QuickBooks Online, you actually have to click the little circle in order to select a transaction in the reconciliation. Also, it doesn't offer, the same number or as many of the third-party apps as it does in the QBO as well. So that was things that were mentioned about the QuickBooks Desktop. And on the other end, we have QuickBooks Online, and of course, the better integration with the third party, the apps. Of course, it's cloud-based and the backup and everything of that sort. Easier to manage multiple users access. You can even have your accountants, set up as users as well. The more modern user interface, you can look at both screens and tell that. But also the bank feed. Everyone loves the bank feed based on the feedback. The fact that you can, connect it with your bank and it's like they're, immediately. And sometimes, there's some issues with that, but majority of those that responded enjoyed the bank feed. Now, if you've probably heard this word, if you're working with QuickBooks Online, is laggy. What does that mean, Boolin? I'm just kidding. It's
That
just
was
really
my question
slow.
to you.
It's really slow. There's always some type of issue going on, here and there. So you do have to have a little bit patience with QuickBooks Online. Purchase separate, subscriptions for each company. That's a problem. The price will increase on you. I have received emails and it'll just say that, like the price is going up. So you don't have really much say about that. I think it has went up at least 2 times, I believe, this year. I believe this year it has went up 2 times. Poor customer service support. If you work with QuickBooks Online, you probably have experienced this. I've had a lot of complaints based on the feedback that I received that there's issues there. But it does have better import capabilities. You can import invoices, you can import journal entries, vendors. So there's a range of things that you can import into QuickBooks Online. I like the format and all of that as well. And then you're able to zoom in to increase font size. That was something that one of the participants said. So this is the feedback. And out of the total feedback that we received, 60% chose QuickBooks Desktop over the 40% that enjoy QuickBooks Online.
Wow, that's pretty
Yeah.
significant. And I think overall, it sounds like in terms of the features, the QuickBook Online is just not as rich in features, right, as the QuickBook Desktop. And I think people
They were
realize
more
that.
focused on the reports is the big thing for QuickBooks Desktop.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
wonder, do we ask if they had a choice, would they may want to explore something else other than
Yes,
transitioning?
thank you for bringing that up. Actually, majority, because they kept, they mentioned that since QuickBooks Desktop is phasing out and, they're really trying to push towards QBO, that they are actually looking for, other solutions. And some had mentioned Sage as well, but they are looking for other solutions, just like some of those that are watching today.
Maybe after this webinar, I'll reach back out to you and we can connect back with those folks that are thinking about maybe transitioning. Now, let me say this, QuickBook Online is a SaaS solution. What that means is that you're paying a subscription. In essence, you're renting the software. You're not buying it. So if you're not happy with, with the way that QuickBook Online is supporting the organization, it doesn't mean that you need to stay with them forever, right? I mean, it's not like you bought it and it's a one-time investment. This is you're paying for it, every month, depending on how your subscription works. So that's something to think about. All right, so reason to upgrade to Sage Intacct. So um, you know, uh, knowing that you're going to be moving off of the desktop, then the question is, what might be the reasons for you to think about transitioning to another system other than the QuickBook Online, which is where Intuit wants you to go, right? So some of the reasons may be, the fund accounting and grants management. So if you are an organizations that manage grants, or if you need to manage funds, I would say Sage is very, very robust in that area. In a little bit of time, we're going to be looking at Sage, and you're going to be able to see the grants modules as part of the Sage Intacct. If you need real-time financial reporting and dashboard. So there is a self-service capability with Sage Intacct with its really nice dashboards and ability for you to push out information to your customers, right? Your customers are folks that you're supporting and servicing within the organizations. Giving them the ability to access their own reports through the dashboard. It's actually very, very nice. And the other thing with Sage is that Sage has a focus on nonprofit. They have what they call a nonprofit quick start, which allows, when you implement and you leverage the nonprofit quick start, it automatically has many financial reports already pre-built. These are nonprofit specific financial reports available to you. And then also the multi-entity, multi-currency support, the ability to handle consolidations and, manage your structure through a multi-entity management is I think one of the many strengths of Sage Intacct. And so if you need to manage multiple entities, you want to have a common chart of accounts or a common structure, a GL structure in place. This is absolutely a great solution for that. What else? Automations and efficiencies, absolutely. There's so much that is built into Sage Intacct, things like checklists, month-end checklists, year-end checklists, things like that. Workflows, approvals that you can turn on for whether it's journal entry approvals or payables or purchasing. So there's a lot of the automation. And when I mentioned that Sage is really popular with nonprofit, it's because of the built-in functionality that Sage has that it's tailored toward nonprofits. Another example might be the fringe and overhead allocation. So if you're grant funded, Sage has a module that allows you on a click of a button allocate your fringe and overhead costs to your grants. Labor costing is another big area with timesheets. So these are some of the automations and efficiencies that really Sage brings to the table for nonprofit. Obviously, it's a cloud-based solution. I think any solution you move off of desktop, you should be looking at a cloud-based. And any modern ERP or accounting solutions out there, they're all pretty much a cloud-based. So you want to be in the cloud. And then there's integration, right? Just like QuickBooks Online, which I think folks that transition to QuickBooks Online just open up to these third-party solutions that do have direct integrations to QuickBooks, which you probably do not have that level of options with desktop. It could be a file import with desktop. Matter of fact, in a desktop file import, you really just couldn't do a file import out using the native QuickBooks Desktop. There's a third party that you would need to leverage for import functionality. That isn't the case with QuickBooks Online, and it's also not the case with Sage Intacct. It's because these are cloud-based solutions, and many of the third party are all pretty much cloud-based solutions. So these are the third party, if they have hooks to either QuickBooks Online or Sage Intacct, will have that direct integration. Now, at how well does it integrate? It all depends on the third-party solutions. Some of them have bi-directional integration. Some may have only one directional one-way integration, so that can vary. And then lastly, compliance and audit trail. So Sage does have very well. It has an audit trail. And then when we talk about compliance, let's say compliance reporting, like for example, if you're federally funded, you might need a CFA report. That's just an example, or the FASB report where you show, with restriction and without restriction. Those type of report you can get based on a click of a button. So just a click of a button, you'll get that report, and it looks exactly what you need. You should not need to make any changes in Excel. These reports are board quality reports. All right, so let me move to the next slide. So accounting system evaluation process. So if you think that, based on your requirements that you're may wanted to take this time, since you're, need to, move off of your current system, how do you go about in evaluating, what your next system may be? Now, I've put together a list of 10 items here. Does it have to be these 10 items? Could there be more? Could it be less? Absolutely, right? And I don't even think that these items are, these are generic things that you want to think about. Whether or not, in some of these, really, whether or not you're moving from in one accounting system to another, or you're moving from an AMS system, these are, some of these process or tasks are pretty generic, right? And so I was just going to quickly go through some of these. Obviously, the number one, you want to make sure you have leadership commitment, right? You want to make sure there's a case built for this type of project. For QuickBooks Desktop, it's pretty straightforward. Intuit is encouraging all of their QBD clients are to transition to QBO. And so that itself really builds the case that you need to transition. The question for you is that, do you want to make a lateral change? Meaning, and given the feedback that we got from the survey, I'm not even sure that, QBD and QBO are lateral, because QBD does have more functionality than QBO. So if you're going from QBD to QBO, depending on what features you're using on the desktop, you may not be getting the same thing on QBO. I would not make that assumption, right? So what you want to do is do your homework, make sure that where you're going to has that functionality you're needing. As a general, if I was looking at it from, just a really general assessment of this, I think if you're going from QBD to QBO, you're actually stepping down just a tad bit, especially on the reporting side. So just something to think about. All right, so number two, identify and document your requirements and need. So you want to be careful with that. You don't want to overdo it, meaning, we're not looking at, 50 page of requirements here. But you do want to capture some level of requirements and need, meaning what it is about your organization, what's the bread and butter of your organization, that these are the must-haves, right? That you need. And be careful in terms of how granular you want to get into, because, for example, I sometimes come across requirements like, I need to be able to post a journal entry. You don't want to be at that level of granularity, but you do want to cover the key requirements that is needed so that, you can run your organization, right? So I would absolutely, document that, and then engage key stakeholders. So this depends on what you're currently doing in your system. So if you have a system where there are other people involved, for example, fundraising, or there are grant people that are involved, you've got grant managers are maybe involved in the accounting world, right? In your accounting operations, you may want to get them involved so that as you're evaluating a new system, you want to make sure that, you're also getting some feedback from them as well. And that is important. If you need, you might need to get their buy-in as well, right? So it depends on, as you transition to another system, what does this future view looks like, and what does it encompass, right? And that's where these key stakeholders may come into play. And then obviously we have to talk about the budget and what is the total cost of ownership, right? And so as LaKenya mentioned, definitely if you have multiple entities, in that situation, don't assume that, moving to QuickBooks Online is going to be cheaper. It could be more expensive. In some cases, in the cases she mentioned, most of the feedback came back indicated it is more expensive, in their case. But you definitely want to identify total cost of ownership. Now, total cost of ownership is interesting because it's not just about how much you paid on the software. When we think about the cost of ownership, because you're moving from a desktop, which has well, I should say, infrastructure costs, right? Because it's got to be installed somewhere. You're going to have a server, right? Whether you install it, you put it in the cloud, or you put it in your closet, for example. It could be sitting in your closet, but you're barely putting it somewhere, right? There's that infrastructure cost, right? So you have to take that into consideration. And then you also want to consider also, is anybody supporting that infrastructure, right? You have an IT staff, and then the backups. So those are some of the things that to consider in the as part of the total cost of ownership. Whereas in the SaaS space, like QuickBooks Online or like Sage Intacct, you're just really paying an annual subscription or a monthly subscription, depending on how you're structured. And I would look at it not just 1 year, I would look at it maybe over a 5-year span. What does that look like, for what that cost may look like. And number 5 would be to explore and compare your options. Obviously, if QuickBooks is an Intuit product, Intuit will want you to stay on QuickBooks. You need to decide whether or not if that's the right path for you. It could be. That could absolutely be the right path, would be to transition to QuickBooks Online. But it may not be. As I think this is a great time to just step back and think about what's out there and what's, do I want to go lateral or do I want to step up, right? And you're also looking ahead in terms of your organization's strategic plan as to what is that strategic plan for the next 3 to 5 years look like, from a growth perspective. From a complexity perspective, what are some of the things that the accounting team is responsible to produce, right? Number 6, determine integration capabilities. I would say that many of the organizations that we work with, they're not just running their accounting system in silos. Many have other systems that need to integrate, whether it's Salesforce, whether it's a fundraising system, whatever that may be, that should be considered as part of your evaluation, and hopefully if you're going to QuickBooks, an online SaaS, a lot of times some of these have hooks to these types of solutions already. So that's something that you want to, make sure you understand. Scalability and growth, I kind of spoke about that a little bit in terms of looking ahead and then understanding how your organization will scale or how the organizations will grow in the next, 3 to 5 years, for example. I think, I've spent my entire career helping nonprofits, implement and support ERP solutions. Prior to Sage Intacct, I have 20 years on Dynamics, Great Plains, GP, which is now a legacy system. And I can tell you, generally speaking, once you've moved to another system, you're generally staying with that system for at least 10, 15 to maybe even 20 years. Okay, so you definitely want to think about that. What does that growth look like for you? Evaluate the partner. So for transition to, let's say, QuickBooks Online, it's pretty straightforward. But if you were looking to step up to a mid-market solution like Sage Intacct, I mentioned Sage Intacct because we work only with nonprofit, and Sage Intacct is a really a key player in that space. Sage's largest client base is nonprofit. And so when you're in that mid-market, it's important to not only evaluate what the solution can do for you, but also who it will be helping you implement the solution. I've always said that, even if you have the best car, right? If you don't have the right driver to the car, you'll still get lost. So make sure you find the right partner who understands your industry, which is a key. And if you don't, I'm sure you've heard of bad implementation. Bad implementation does not necessarily mean the bad solution. It was the bad, you just, may not have selected the right partner to help you, to take you from, where you are to the new ERP solution. So decisions and implementation plan, as you do these evaluations, make sure you have a plan in place, timelines and things like that, right? And then, so I think 9 and 10 kind of go hand in hand. Of course, you're going to need to make a decision as to the system and then planning for that transition. If you are thinking about stepping up to a mid-market or mid-market solution, generally speaking, like with a Sage Intacct, how long does it take to implement Sage? I would say typically takes about 3 months to do it. Have we taken a client to go live less than that time? Yes. Could it take more than 3 months? Absolutely. So I think it depends on resource, the nonprofit organization's resource, the resource commitment that they can put onto this type of project, right? And also understand that any transition you're making, this is not something that you do every day. This is a project. So you have your, day-to-day job. And then of course, this is a project on top of your day-to-day. So you want to give yourself some time to do this type of transition. All right, so we've got the next polling questions. Are you evaluating a new accounting system? So
Somehow these questions got swapped around, so I'm gonna launch the previous question and then I'll relaunch this one and we can look at the results.
okay, sounds good. I'm gonna bring the results in here. So I'm glad. Oh, okay. So we do have someone who says not sure what kind of organization, but I'm glad to see that most are 501c3. We basically work with 501c3 or 501c6 for the most part. So yeah. And then what about the next question? So that was, I think that was question number 2.
Yeah, I'm gonna relaunch this for everyone to answer again.
Okay. Majority are looking. Okay, good. All right. So this is a technology leadership, leadership presentation, and because it's a technology webinar, we generally show a little bit of a software. So since I spoke, we spoke about two cloud-based solutions. We talked about QuickBooks Online, and we talked a little bit about Sage Intacct. What we will do is show a little bit about Sage Intacct. And so what I will do is I am going to bring up my Sage Intacct here. So and I'm going to stop sharing and then share again. All right, so hopefully you see a dashboard. And this is Sage Intacct. So it's cloud-based. So when you when you connect to Sage, you're in different sections, or you could be in different sections in the system. I happen to, when I log in, I happen to be in a dashboard, and I'm logged in as the controller. And Sage allows you to have multiple dashboards, as you can see there. And a couple of things that are very unique. Now, there's a lot of things I can talk about in Sage because this is a full-blown ERP solution. So I kind of have to pick and choose because we only have a few minutes left in terms of what I can show you. But a couple of things I wanted to say is that Sage allows you to have multiple dimensions. Whereas, let's say, QBO, you may be able to use the class dimension and maybe the customer dimensions. Here you have different dimensions and which you can filter in the system. So for example, you can filter this entire dashboard by departments or programs, right? You can select specific departments or programs or groups of programs and groups of department. And when you select certain departments or programs, this entire dashboard will filter to that department. You can, if you have multiple entities, you can filter on the different entities as needed. Or fund. So if you need to manage by fund, you could filter it by fund. And then here you can also manage the grants or projects, right? Because you have a dimension, could be grants or project or groups of grants and projects. So I think the great thing about the Sage platform is that you do have essentially unlimited unlimited dimensions. The system comes with a set of dimensions, but you can always add more, so which makes it really unlimited. And so I just wanted to just briefly show you these dashboards and reports. You can push out KPIs or performance card to really evaluate key informations for your customers. I say they're customers because the accounting department is really a service department within your organizations, and you're servicing folks that need to know where the organization's doing, how the organization's doing, and where the organization is going. So you can push out KPIs. You can also push out financial statements here. Financial statements can be shown in different ways, right? This is a financial statement. There is, at the end of the day, not too much of a difference between this financial statement and this financial statement. Behind the scene, it uses the same building block. The only difference is that this is shown as a graphical layout. You're essentially a P&L report, whereas this are right there. You can see the numbers. You can still see the numbers behind this. You can toggle between the graph and the numbers, right? And then you can drill right into the report. So here I am drilling right into the report. And so similar to QuickBooks, this system, from a reporting perspective, is a point and click. So meaning that if I wanted to see data associated with expenditure, point and click, and ability to drill down all the way to the transaction level. So I think if you're, obviously this is a QuickBook web presentation, you're on QuickBook. If you're transitioning from QuickBook to a solution like Sage Intacct, you should have a level of comfort, familiarity in terms of that navigation, right? You can, in here, I still have my 12 months here. Obviously, I have a breakdown of all my expenses here. And if I were to go into, let's say, office supplies and click into December, here I've got all my dimensions, right? So I can see my GL posting, if it came from accounts payable, that's what these are, accounts payable journal. You'll see that these are the invoice number. And interestingly, I just wanted to quickly talk about what you see here. These are your dimensions. This is the description of that bill. You've got either, you could track by grant, department, where that funding may be coming from. and budget codes. So one of the things that we've implemented with many of our nonprofit clients is, especially if they're grant funded, as you know, a funder that is funding grants, that budget may be different than your organizational budget. Generally it's a lot more detail, and so you could, track your grant budget line item directly, in the general ledger. So therefore, when you are reporting back to your funder, you're really just running a P&L against this dimension. And so here, I'm actually not at the lowest level. So if I click on accounts payable journal, it then takes me to the lowest level. Is this what they call laggy, Kenya? So I think I think it's more on my internet, here, but this is at the lowest level, and it tells me, this is actually a very old bill, but I can see my attachment, the bill that's associated, the invoice that's associated with this bill, and of course the line item distribution. I can see the full entry here. Sage does have AP automation, workflow, all of that. And I mentioned, previously that I was gonna also show you grants. So I showed you how, like a typical P&L report, you can drill down to the details. And I'm gonna switch over to look at the different dimensions that you may have. So these are some of the dimensions that you may want to set up, right? You can track departments and programs I've mentioned. You can track donor budget code, right? Restriction, unrestricted, permanently restricted, grants and projects. So if you may have grants or projects that you want to track, this is an example of, some of the grants. You can set them up as parent-child relationship. And so let's just look at this child grant, for example. There's a lot of information, right? So the grants allows you to track both financial and non-financial data. All this information associated with your grant can be tracked. You can track, let's say, grants from soup to nut, meaning that you can track them before the grant has been awarded. So you can, different stages of the grant, say, if you only want to see proposals submitted, you could go back to your and say, I only want to see my grants where, they're at the proposal stage. So these are the grants that are at proposal stage. So the grants management component of Sage allows you to track non-financial data coupled with financial data. So what does that mean from a reporting? It's very powerful. So if I go to a grant manager dashboard, and this is one of my favorite report, because it gives you a high level view of where your grants are or your project, right? So this does take a few seconds to load. So I'm gonna just bring this up really quickly. So I'm gonna run it as a specific point in time here, but this is my federal, so maybe I'm going to make it a little bit bigger here. So I may have a couple of my grants here, my federal or could be foundation grant, but all this information here, I spoke about non-financial data. This is all non-financial data coupled with the financial data. So this type of report, which is different than your balance sheet or P&L, you can certainly get a P&L by grant, but this type of report gives you a high level view of exactly where your grants are. So it tells you the grant period. It tells you, if you wanted to put any additional who's the principal investigator, for example. And then from here are all the financial data, right? So you can pull it from inception to date, right? Inception to date is multi-year. You can pull, let's say, receipt or AR, or if there was deferred revenue, or what was the revenue, or what is the revenues through specific point in time. What's my labor cost? What's my non-labor cost? What's my total cost? What is my remaining amount that's left on the what was this amount spent? And then finally, also, you can track what's the number of months remaining to spend down on that grant. So, you know, sometimes it's helpful to know how much do I have left to spend down, but how much time do I have to spend it down, right? That's also important. So I am going to take us back to, I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to pull back our presentation here. Because our presentation is 60 minutes. And I know that we are starting to run out of time. So we did look at the financial report and dashboard, talked a little bit about the dimension, and then talked a little bit about grants management. As I said, you know, I can just go on and on with Sage Intacct. It's literally it is my favorite system. But you know, we have a limited time. So really quickly, we have our fourth full polling question. Go ahead and answer that, but we're going to move forward. So I just wanted to say that this concludes our presentation for today. We're very, very active in terms of the of our educational webinars that we put out. So just to talk a little bit about some of the upcoming presentations that we have. On November 20th, we have the Supercharged Reporting with Velexo. Velexo does integrate with QuickBooks, by the way. It is a reporting tool. So if we talked about QuickBooks Online not being as robust, Velexo may be able to help you on that, right? What's new with Sage Intacct 2024 R4? This is Sage rollout quarterly releases. This is the last release of the year for Sage. And it is a technical presentation. We go through and talk about the new features that are released with Sage. And then we've got the Sage Intacct 1099 prep. It is the year end. So everyone is getting ready for 1099 at year end. So that's on December the 12th. We also have the MIP 1099 prep. So that's early next year. And then lastly, in January next year, we have the CFO must communicate beyond the numbers. As everyone know, you work so hard to push data into the system. You know, are you producing what is necessary or what's needed to communicate to your leadership about your organization? So it's going to focus on reporting and effective reporting, effective financial reporting. So that's on January 15th. I don't know if I know we're running out of time, so if there's any questions, we'll make sure that we will get back to you on those questions. But we wanted to thank you, everyone, for attending our presentation. And you know, we hope that this presentation is helpful for you as you are evaluating sort of your next step from QuickBooks Desktop. So thank you everyone for joining. We hope to see you soon. And thank you, LaKenya.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate your support.
Thank you.
Thank you.